Welcome back to another Hoop Truth video. In this video, I'm going to be settling the score on the single most legendary, hardware-heavy position in the history of the sport. I am ranking the top 5 centers to ever step foot on an NBA floor. Just think about the sheer weight of legacy at the 5 spot. For the first 50 years of basketball, the center position was the absolute sun that the rest of the NBA universe orbited around. If you didn't have a dominant big man, you simply didn't win championships. And even as the modern era has shifted to the perimeter, the center spot has still reinvented itself, turning into a position anchored by hyper-efficient playmakers, offensive hubs, and defensive systems. Now, to make this list, you couldn't just be an elite basketball player. You actually had to be a culture defamer. You had to force this league to literally rewrite the rulebook just to give the rest of humanity a fair chance. I'm leaving out the surface level narratives today. I'm analyzing peak statistical dominance, defensive value, championship resilience, and exactly how the modern legends on this list performed in their last season. My top 5 is locked in, but the order is going to cause an absolute war in the comment section once again. So make sure you leave a like and subscribe because these videos do take a long time to produce. Other than that, let's get straight into it. I am tipping things off at number 5 with a man whose name is literally synonymous with winning. The ultimate anchor of the Boston Celtics dynasty, Bill Russell. Let's establish the baseline. He played 13 seasons in the NBA, and in those 13 seasons, he won 11 world championships. Russell won 11 rings in 13 years. Just let that sink in. He won his final 2 championships as a player coach. He is a 5-time regular season MVP and a 12-time All-Star. He is one of 3 players to ever three-peat in an MVP. And although he does have 11 championships, he doesn't have any finals MVPs because the finals MVP trophy is named after him, and that wasn't a thing when he played. For decades, people have tried to diminish Russell's legacy by saying, oh, well, he only played in an era with 8 teams or whatever. He didn't have to score. The common argument is that he played with plumbers. But that is just fundamentally misunderstanding of how Bill Russell revolutionized the game of basketball. Bill Russell had historical career numbers with 15.1 points per game, 22.5 rebounds per game, 4.3 assists per game, and an estimated 8 blocks a game. That is unofficial. They didn't start counting steals and blocks until after he retired. But he did have an estimated 8 blocks a game and 22.5 rebounds per game. So before Bill Russell, defense was played flat-footed. Big men stood in the paint and waited. Russell turned defense into an aerial vertical art form. He didn't just block shots out of bounds. He deliberately blocked them to his teammates to launch the fast break. He was a 6'10" athletic marvel with track star mobility who acted as a psychological terrifying wall in the paint. He is known as one of the greatest passing big men to ever live, serving as the connective tissue of the Celtics dynasty. So why is the greatest winner in sports history sitting at number 5 and not number 1? It ultimately does come down to era, and it comes down to his volume, offensive volume, and his efficiency. Russell was a career 44% shooter from the field, which is not bad, but he is a center, so you do want to see that number around 55 though. In an era where he held a significant athletic advantage, he was not a self-reliant individual scoring engine. When we compare him to the 4 absolute offensive juggernauts ahead of him on this list, Russell simply didn't possess the capability to carry a team's scoring load. But as a teammate, a leader, and the absolute foundational block of defensive basketball, Bill Russell remains an immortal. He anchors the list at elite number 5, and I don't think I could put him higher. I think the era that he played in does affect this a little bit, but he's the greatest rebounder of all time. He's the greatest defender of all time, and that's not even up for debate. And it ultimately came down to, what do I value more? Do I value defense or offense? Because the next guy on this list is pretty much the exact polar opposite of Bill Russell. He doesn't play much defense, but his offense is the best we've ever seen. And, of course, I'm talking about Nikola Jokic. And I didn't want to disrespect Bill Russell by putting him at 5 because I'm sure he definitely deserves to be higher on this list. Center list is very stacked, though. And Nikola Jokic the Joker. Let me just explain. I know some people might think putting an active player at 4 over Bill Russell is a bit premature, but if you watch what this man does on a nightly basis, then you are watching the most complete, hyper-efficient offensive engine to ever play the center position. I've said multiple times he's the greatest offensive center in NBA history. To truly appreciate why Jokic cracks the top 4 all-time right now, then we have to look exactly at what he just accomplished in this past NBA regular season. Jokic played 65 games, putting up 27.7 points per game, 12.9 rebounds, 10.7 assists on 57% shooting from the field and 38% from 3. He was first in rebounds and first in assists. It is absolutely staggering numbers from Jokic. He is the second player to ever average a 27 or more point triple-double in NBA history in multiple seasons. But he took it a step further because he became the first player in the entire history of the NBA to lead the league in both rebounds per game and assists per game in the exact same season. Think about the mountain he had to climb this past year. The Denver Nuggets were decimated by injuries with key pieces missing a combined 140 games. Jokic carried them on his back to a 54-28 record and the 3rd seed in a brutal Western Conference. He was leading the MVP race at a historic pace before a mid-season knee injury sidelined him for a month, ultimately finishing runner-up to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But that marks 6 straight years that Jokic has finished in the top 2 of MVP voting. And 3 of those years, he actually won the MVP. But that is a feat accomplished by only 2 other players in NBA history. So why does Jokic land at 4? How did he beat out Bill Russell, and why is he not higher up? That's because his offensive gravity is completely unprecedented. He is a 3-time MVP. He's a Finals MVP and the ultimate hybrid of an elite, high-volume scorer and arguably the greatest passer on earth. So why isn't he higher? The 3 men above him are, quite frankly, they're just better. I think Jokic can get higher later in his career, especially with another MVP. But the 3 men above him, they represent the absolute gold standard of two-way championship dominance. Now, while Jokic is an elite spatial and defensive rebounder, he lacks the vertical rim protection and lateral quickness in space that the top 3 utilize to completely shut down playoff offenses. But at just 31 years old, with his prime still wide open, the potential for Jokic to climb even higher on this ladder is incredibly real. He locks in at number 4 on this list. Ultimately, Jokic is a much efficient player than Bill Russell. He's a better offensive player. He's the greatest offensive center of all time. Bill Russell is the greatest defender of all time. So it really came down to what I value more, offense or defense. And I do, as you guys probably noticed in these videos, I do value defense incredibly heavily. Obviously, Bill Russell has way more career achievements and accolades than Jokic. But he also played in an era with only 12 teams. And I know I mentioned that when I said why Bill Russell is on this list, why people might not want to see him, whatever. But I think that Bill Russell is good enough to make the list because of that, but I think you can't put him at number 1 just because he has the most championships. Now, at the number 3 spot, this might be controversial too. I'm not really sure where a lot of people put him, but I am introducing the most fundamentally perfect, skilled, two-way center to ever play the game, Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. Now, if you want to build the absolute perfect modern basketball player from scratch, you build Hakeem Olajuwon. He possessed the footwork of a soccer player, he possessed the agility of a guard, and he has the touch of a mid-range shooter with the interior strength of an old-school enforcer. The resume speaks for itself. He's a 2-time NBA champion, a 2-time Finals MVP, the 1994 regular season MVP. He's a 12-time All-Star, a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, and he remains the NBA's all-time leader in blocks. And that accolade, the block shots, that is going to remain for decades and decades on end. Unless Wemby can beat him out, I don't think another player even will get close for a very long time. But that 1994 season where he won MVP, he won DPOY and Finals MVP in the exact same season. He was the only player to ever do that. That 1994 season is the highest single-season mountain any center has ever climbed. Not even Jokic, not even Bill Russell, not even the 2 guys ahead of him on this list have reached heights of that. Hakeem didn't have a co-star super team. He carried the Houston Rockets through a grueling playoff run, completely outplaying Patrick Ewing and the New York Knicks in the finals, and Hakeem was able to anchor every single possession on both ends of the floor. He absolutely carried that team. Let's talk about his offensive bag. The Dream Shake wasn't just a highlight move, it was a complex series of counters, fakes, and drop steps that made him completely unguardable in isolation. Defensively, Hakeem is arguably the most versatile defensive big man to ever live. He didn't just stay in the paint, he could switch out onto perimeter guards, rip the ball away from them, and then sprint back down court to swallow up a layup. He averaged over 2 steals and 3 blocks per game for his career. So why does Hakeem beat out Jokic? It is simply just that absolute flawless two-way footprint where Jokic might be the greatest offensive center of all time, Bill Russell might be the greatest defensive player of all time, but Hakeem can do both at an incredibly elite level where it might not be, up for debate that he might not be the best at either, but he's one of the best at both for the big man position of all time. So Hakeem could dominate a playoff game offensively and simultaneously wipe out the opposing team's entire interior game plan defensively. He takes home the all-time bronze medal at number 3. I can't put him any higher, though. The two guys on this list are absolute dominators at the center position. Coming in at the number 2 spot is the most physically dominant force the NBA world has ever witnessed. We have Shaquille O'Neal. We've seen big players. We've seen great players. We've seen skilled players, but we have never seen a human being combine 7'1", 325 pounds of pure muscle with the explosion, verticality, and speed of a skilled tight end. During his absolute peak with the Los Angeles Lakers from 2000 to 2002, Shaq wasn't just the best player in the league. He was an absolute natural disaster. Let's look at the hardware. He's a 4-time NBA champion, a 3-time consecutive Finals MVP. He had the last three-peat in NBA history and probably won't be another one for a very long time anyway. He's a 15-time All-Star and the 2000 regular season MVP, where he was 1 vote away from becoming the first ever unanimous MVP in league history, which is absolutely crazy. And it's shocking that he only has 1 MVP with the talent level that he had. But if we bring up Shaq's 3-peat final stat lines, this is where it gets crazy. Just in the finals alone, but in his 3-peat, he had, starting off at 2000, he had 38 points per game, 16.7 rebounds per game. In 2001, 33 points per game, 15.8 rebounds per game. And in 2002, 36.3 points per game, 12.3 rebounds per game. That's the most dominant 3-year playoff peak ever. And he might have had Kobe on his team. You can't argue that Kobe should have won that. Yes, Kobe obviously made an impact. You can't argue Kobe should have won Finals MVP over numbers like this. If you look at those Finals numbers, the first one, 38 and 17, teams had to completely change their roster construction, keeping 3 or 4 backup big men on the bench just to use their 6 fouls on Shaq. He completely broke the structural economics of NBA defense. If you played him single coverage, he turned your starting center into a basket ornament. If you doubled him, he still had the passing vision to kick it out to players like Kobe Bryant or other open shooters. Why does Shaq take the number 2 spot over Hakeem and Jokic? I think it's pretty simple because his absolute peak ceiling is the highest we have ever seen in terms of playoff dominance. No one has had an answer for peak Shaq. And yes, like I said, I think Shaq offensively and defensively is better than Jokic just offensively. And then I think Hakeem comes pretty close. I think he comes closer than a lot of people would like to admit. But Shaq's absolute dominance earns him a spot in the top 2. But why isn't he number 1? It comes down to longevity and career optimization. Shaq himself will tell you he left some chips on the table. His conditioning fluctuated throughout his career. His free throw shooting was a notorious liability from the time he got drafted. Coaches literally weaponized the hack of Shaq to take advantage of Shaq's horrible free throw shooting. And his defensive effort in the regular season could be highly inconsistent, but he showed up in the playoffs when it mattered, which is why I have him this high. But for 3 years, Shaquille O'Neal played the most unstoppable brand of basketball. human eyes have ever seen. He holds the number 2 spot with an iron grip, and there's a chance that Jokic can somehow get up to 3. 2 is going to be very hard to take down from a player as dominant and as talented as Shaquille O'Neal. When you factor in peak dominance, career longevity, individual hardware, and team success, there is only one man who can claim the throne. The undisputed greatest center of all time. Shouldn't even be a conversation, but for some reason it is. We have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem didn't just put together a great career. He built a basketball empire that spanned over 2 decades, from the moment he entered the league as Lou Alcindor with the Milwaukee Bucks to his retirement as the captain of the Showtime Lakers. Kareem was the standard of basketball excellence. Now let's lay out the absolute gold standard of basketball resumes. He's a 6-time NBA champion with 2 Finals MVPs, but a staggering 19-time All-Stars, 15-time All-NBA selection, 11-time All-Defensive Team selection, and an NBA record 6 regular season MVPs, and the MVPs alone almost put him at number 1 on this list. Now, if we look at Kareem's ultimate longevity stats, he had the most points in a career for the very longest time until LeBron broke it, but he had 38,387 career points. That's without a 3-point line for the majority of his career. He also had 17,446 total rebounds and 3,189 total blocks. The foundation of Kareem's dominance was the single most devastating, unguardable individual weapon in sports history that very few players can replicate, and that is the skyhook. Because of his 7'2" frame, his high release point, and his ability to shoot it completely fluidly with either hand, the shot was statistically impossible to block. It allowed Kareem to remain an elite 20-point-per-game scoring threat even into his late 30s and early 40s. But don't let the late career longevity fool you into forgetting how terrifyingly athletic his early peak was. In the 1970s, Kareem was a mobile, high-flying defensive monster who led the league in blocks and rebounds while routinely dropping 30-point nights. He won a Finals MVP in 1971 with Milwaukee and then won another Finals MVP in 1985 with the Lakers. That's a 14-year gap between Finals MVPs. He won at every single level. He adjusted his role perfectly as he aged to co-star next to players like Magic Johnson and even James Worthy, and he maintained a level of physical discipline that was decades ahead of his time. He's a top 3 player to ever lace them up at any position, that's undisputedly, and he is the undisputed number 1 center of all time. Like I said, for some reason it's a debate. I don't think it should be a debate. Kareem proved it in his incredible, very long career, why he deserves to be number 1 on this list. Also, I don't think anybody's going to take the crown from him, at least not for a very long time. It'll be a couple more decades, I think, before somebody takes the crown from him. But other than that, that's just going to wrap up this video. So there you have it. That's my official, definitive top 5 centers of all time. And I know the old school purists might be a little furious with Bill Russell at 5, and I'm not 100% happy with it either. But I know the analytics crowd is going to argue Jokic should already be higher based on his historic past season. But when you balance peak dominance, defensive equity, and all-around impact, this is how the crown settles. Now, I do want to hear from you guys. Who did I rank too high? Does Jokic's historic season give him the edge over Hakeem in your eyes? Or does Shaq's peak dominance make him your personal number 1? Make sure to leave your personal top 5 lists in the comments below so we can get a real debate going. And these videos do take a very long time to produce, so please do me a massive favor and hit that like, subscribe, and notification button for more daily NBA content.